Well, hello, all you wonderful souls out there checking in to this podcast. Welcome. Today we are here, a few yogis from the Halifax Brahma Kumari's Meditation Center, and also a special guest, Ash from the UK today, a yogi in the UK. And as per our series, today we're going to be speaking about how to deal with fear and vulnerability at this time. So just like before, what we did was we had a little meditation for about a minute and we reflected on this topic, and then we did about 5 or 6 minutes of writing, just fresh writing of what occurs to us about this topic. And now we're going to share those insights, and we certainly hope they resonate with you. So Terry, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Over to you.
Thank you, Mara. Did any of you ever imagine that we would live through a time like this? Having to self-isolate, schools having been closed, and we don't know when they'll open. People having to work from home. Essential services facing an invisible enemy. The news on 24/7 talking about the numbers of people getting sick in the world, the stories of those who have been sick, and the numbers of people who have died. All of this makes us feel fearful and vulnerable. And each of us handles our fear and vulnerability in different ways. And sometimes in a household, the ways we handle that fear and vulnerability differ. So we really need to be very caring and considerate and tolerant of all people that we are close to at this time. We know that some internalize the fear, some act on the fear, some just hide and become depressed. And so we as a society, as loving souls, as loving individuals, need to help those who are having difficulty. When I am fearful, I'm often fearful because I feel vulnerable. And when I feel vulnerable, it makes me fearful. So it becomes a vicious cycle. Fear and vulnerability go hand in hand. People will often say to you, one of the ways that you can manage this fear is to be positive. But when fear becomes overwhelming, people ask, how can I be positive? I don't have enough power to be positive. I'm just stuck in the fear. One of the spiritual solutions to that is to sit quietly and go deeply inward. Go deep inside to connect with yourself. When you connect with yourself, you can connect with something bigger than yourself. You can connect with the Supreme, with the Divine, with God. And with God's ever loveful, ever powerful, ever present peace, that power can flow into you and help in these times. Then I'll be nurtured and I can give my fear away to the universe. Oh yes, the fear will continue to come and go. But if I keep going back to God for the little dose of love and peace, then I will get through this, and I will get through this whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. As you were sharing, I wrote down invisible enemy. and that cycle that you talked about, the vulnerability and the fear and that cycle. And then you ended with the invisible, powerful, loving energy that would be the antidote to that enemy. And that we can connect to that energy, our understanding and our version of divine and God in our own way. And that by going inward, we can actually replace that fear and deal with that enemy in a very, very practical way. Thank you so much. It's beautiful. Carol, what are your insights? Fear and vulnerability this time.
Yes, well, certainly the suddenness of the change in the world has got many of us off guard. And although we're a week or more into local states of emergency, it still is taking us, myself at least, some time to adjust to the new routine. It's just the sudden loss of freedom of movement and being able to go anywhere and do whatever we want is in itself a bit constraining. We've lost contact in terms of the direct personal way. Being a hugger, I certainly miss being able to hug my friends. But I think things certainly like our Zoom calls and telephone contact with friends and family is certainly one of the practical, helpful things we can do to keep from becoming fearful and vulnerable. Certainly it requires us to maintain our regular routine of meditation, doing some form of exercise, and keeping engaged in practical projects, those things that we've left until later when we had time. So I think too, it's important to keep engaged in activities that we love, such as listening to music, reading poetry, other types of reading, all of which can help us stay centered and focused and keep us away from wild imagining about worst case scenarios that can happen. So, you know, in this way, keeping positive outlook on our quiet time, it kind of may be a way to in a sense, shut out the fear and worry and vulnerability that can occur. Mm-hmm. From a practical perspective, being someone who lives alone, I find it's good to have a backup plan just in case something should happen of an urgent nature regarding health. So once you have that plan put aside, then it's, you know, you can keep your life simple, knowing that you've got the bases covered. Keeping to your meditative practice and your engagement in quiet activities, I think is a way to stay calm, stay centered, and manage what you can manage and just let go of the rest.
That's great, Carol. Thank you so much. I love this punch list of all the ways we can stay engaged and keep ourselves positive through our routines, through staying connected with others, exercise, staying centered. The key theme there, it seems to me, is staying engaged with ourselves and our lives as much as possible to, you know, create our new normals right now as much as possible. So beautiful, very practical ideas. Thank you so much. Debbie, you're on next. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mara, and Carol and Terry before me. Great suggestions. I remembered a time when I first felt I had conquered fear. It was one of my early benefits of meditation, actually. It was back in 2000, and it came about that I was sitting with two of my friends on the deck in Addis Ababa, and they were chatting about all the difficulties they were facing. And I realized I couldn't relate to what they were saying anymore. And they noticed I wasn't throwing in some suggestions, that I was silent, and they said to me, "Aren't you afraid?" And I responded, "No. For the first time, I don't feel afraid anymore." And this was a feeling of fearlessness. It had nothing to do with courage or facing a roaring lion or anything like that. But I had this very settled feeling of knowing I was a soul. And no matter what happened to this body, the energy of this soul would live on. And that was at a time in 2000 when there were a lot of other great fears demanding our attention in the world. But that feeling hasn't left me. And because of having a daily practice of centering myself and connecting with the higher power, I daily conquer fear, and it's my vaccine. The body is vulnerable, and I take all the health precautions to keep myself and others safe from the virus. But I know I am a soul. So just try it out. I am a soul. Say it to yourself. My friends are souls. My family are souls. I am a soul.
Thank you, Debbie. Wow. What a wonderful mantra for us to remember at this time, that I am much more than just a body, that I am an eternal soul, and that I can connect and center myself with that beautiful mantra, I am a soul. That's just lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that. This is so much fun. Leela, can't wait to hear what your insights are.
Thanks, Mara. The first thing that came to mind was a practice that I've been doing for several years now, and it's an energetic bubble. So I'm just going to suggest that people could experiment with this themselves. They could perhaps create a positive energetic bubble for themselves. Just as we are all being asked by the medical world to stay in our individual bubbles, now we can do this energetically. We can energetically create a bubble of protection, strong immunity from negative influences, and peace and comfort around us. We carry this bubble around with us wherever we go.
Mm-hmm.
The bubble keeps us safe. We can also choose to saturate our mind with positive thoughts for the self, for others, and for our entire world. We can practice seeing how positivity can change our attitudes, our vision, and our perspectives. I can see myself as a strong person who generates positive vibrations towards myself, others, and the environment around me. I can choose to turn any negative thoughts completely around. This actually is a golden opportunity to really examine my inner world of thoughts and attitudes and vision towards others, and really focus on creating the mindset I want. I know this is a healthy practice for me, boosts my natural immune system, and sends waves of goodness towards those around me and even those far away. Any feelings of fear can become transformed into feelings of benevolence towards myself and others.
Thank you, Leila. That's beautiful. As you were sharing, I got this image of a positive saturation bubble coming in through my top of my head like a white light, and just positively using my imagination to my benefit, really, to saturate myself with positive vibrations, positive thoughts, positive protection, and to take charge of my state of mind with this positive energy. And that we can do that daily as a way of working with our inner world, really choosing that mindset every day. I really love that. I'm definitely going to try that experiment. Thank you. Tim, how about you? Fear and vulnerability.
Lots of great suggestions here today. So for myself, whenever I'm dealing with fear, I often ask myself, what's actually at the root of this fear? And when I have the courage to face that or examine it a little deeper, that perceived fear, I can see it more for what it is rather than for how it toys with my emotions. Mm. So if I can momentarily quell my unbalanced emotional response and allow a more reasonable look at the situation. So I have to allow for the positive elements of that situation to come up. And that's actually sort of a balancing thing. So in every situation, there's negative and positive. And if I'm feeling very negative about a situation, then I have to look for the positive. And sometimes it's quite difficult to do that. But there are positives in this situation. So for example, if we're talking about the current COVID-19 situation, there are lots of positives. There's huge community movement that's coming forth. There's all kinds of health professionals that are basically laying their life on the line for the good of for the greater good. There's just community groups that are pulling together to make sure people have enough food. You can go on, and basically when you're balancing that, you have to find enough positives so that your negative feelings about the situation start to subside until you can bring it to a balanced point.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's quite effective.
It's great, Tim.
Thanks.
We can always count on you for depth, Tim. I love what's at the root of it. I think this is a really wonderful posture to take right now with ourselves, this posture of curiosity. Like, what is at the root of this? What's going on? And then going a bit deeper and looking at the situation and examining both where the fear is coming up in the negatives, but also what is the positive, and reminding ourselves of that balance. But I think actually just being curious and reflective about what's at the root of things, what's happening for me right now, and being curious and loving about that as we examine those balance of those positive and negatives. That's great wisdom. Thank you. And Ash joining us from the UK today. Really looking forward to hearing you, and we get to hear your beautiful British accent too, which will be such a treat. So no pressure.
Thank you for having me. It's really lovely to be part of this group, and thank you all for your sharing. Actually, it's been so varied and unique and different. It's just, yeah, really pleasant to hear the creativity. So I'll just read what I've written.
Great.
And it was particularly related to, so it starts off with, we are living in times where the only thing that is certain is the uncertain. It is important to remember that situations will come and go in my life, but the influence of these situations will affect my state of mind and my capacity to deal with them. My state of mind will dictate the quality of my thoughts, and my thoughts will create emotions and feelings. Feelings of fear will increase not just the quantity of the negative thoughts, but the impact that this will have on my mental and emotional well-being. To be well, I have to recognize the connection between my thoughts, feelings, and energy. When negative feelings are repeatedly present, there is no strength in the soul. We experience vulnerability, and as a consequence, a mindset that is tired, disempowered, and a feeling of being disheartened. This mindset is one of being a victim, where I will seek blame, and I'm unable to see the one truth, that I am responsible for the creation and choices in my thoughts. In this state, internal resistance towards the situation only increases, and we're unable to find peace because we're unable to accept. This suffering creates isolation, and this is why we suffer alone. To be free from this, I must recognize my spiritual identity. And then I'm able to trust in my inner goodness. Understanding who I am is essential to overcoming obstacles and challenges. Spiritual awakening will bring this understanding and recognition. To be free, I must know the truth about who I really am and what I really possess. To know this is to know you, that you are only positive and powerful. And touching this place inside of me will create separation between the world on the outside and my world on the inside. Deep feelings of peace will be experienced. And this is the start of this inner awakening. A peace that is unworldly, a peace that is deeply satisfying, a peace that brings inner state of contentment, clarity, and centeredness. It is from this experience that I'm able to connect with the source, a divine authority that is constantly peaceful and loving. This connection strengthens and empowers the soul, just as a battery is being charged by a charger. My consciousness begins to open to new possibilities. I feel a sense of conviction and courage to move in the right direction, and I trust. And this empowered mindset allows me to influence any situations and obstacles with clarity and strength. I'm able to experience myself as I am, completely positive and free from fear. So let me now move from inner conflict to inner connection and trust in my inner goodness and repeatedly create thoughts that uplift me. Let me pay attention to the quality of my thoughts. Let me pay attention to be aware of the source of negative thoughts and to move away from these.
I can't really imagine adding anything to that. That is just beautiful wisdom. I can't believe you wrote that in 5 minutes. That was beautiful. And it really builds on what Debbie was talking about, being a soul and how fear drains the strength of the soul, and how we can strengthen it very powerfully and set up a little barrier between that internal world and external world. So much beautiful wisdom there. Thank you, Ash. So glad you could join us. David, you're on next.
We fear getting sick. We fear the unknown. Some of the changes happening in our world make us feel vulnerable and even challenge our identity and our sense of self. How do we overcome or at least manage these emotions? Or more so, how do we transform or eradicate them? I think taking a moment to focus on others and think about others and how we can support and serve them is one way.
Mm-hmm.
We all have certain gifts and we can reach out and share them with others. Even in silent prayer, we reach out. Many others in this world have been feeling fearful and vulnerable for a very, very long time. But we also need to spend the time nurturing the self, accepting that there might be some fear and vulnerability present, but shifting attention away from that and celebrating the love and the resilience we all possess. Growing and watering and praying for that strength that lies deep within us and is strengthened by the Supreme. Love overcomes fear. Resilience overcomes vulnerability. Love ourselves and accept the love from others and the love of God. Remember the resilience in our past and that of our ancestors, and respond to the situation in front of us within the parameters we've been given. Don't try to control the things we can't control, but take advantage of the strengths and talents and capabilities we have, and the connections we have with others and the cosmos, and be a loved, strong, and powerful being that we know we are. Let the fear and vulnerability go.
Thank you, David. Love overcomes fear. So beautiful. And I love that you started with focusing on others, because we are so focused on ourselves in self-preservation right now. And yet that focus on others is so gratifying, so fulfilling, a wonderful distraction from myself. And I love this idea of growing, watering, praying, growing and nurturing the resilience inside of us, and then having this love exchange between our relationship with ourselves and others. Love overcomes fear. Very beautiful. Thank you, David. Judy, you're up next.
Thank you, Mara. Wonderful, David. I'm taking that with me. The resilience overcomes vulnerability was wonderful. As I was listening to, it's funny, the first image that came into my mind as we sat in silence was fear, and I could feel it. And I just described it quickly. It was like it coiling like a snake in my stomach, and then rising up and transforming into a tree with branches extending into every vein of my body. And it was, I had this full sort of body experience of fear was the first thing that happened to me when we went into, and then Debbie was talking about, I'm fearless. And I thought, oh, you know, so I had the opposite experience in the little meditation that we just did. And then I realized, oh, there was just even this last year, I think it was, I decided I'm fed up with courage, because I've had so much courage because I've had so much fear. I thought, okay, it's time to move on from courage. I just want to be fearless. So it was lovely to hear Deb speak about that. And contrary to what happened to me in this little meditation. So I began with the fear. And then I realized that fear was actually a very intensely physical experience. And yet it comes from the soul. And I know that there are puddles of, you know, unreconciled stuff inside most souls, you know, stuff that's buried, right? So puddles of pain and sorrow are stored in the subconscious of the soul. And then the events around me actually just scratch the scab. And so inside there are, you know, good reasons for fear from the past, because fear is really based on suffering, and I don't want to suffer again. So I guess the first thing that came to me was cut myself some slack. It's not like I'm making this up. I know that I can manage my thoughts and how much I indulge in those feelings and those thoughts. But the first step for me was just to accept it's okay. There's stuff in there. You're not making up the fact that you're feeling this fear. It's there. And then I went on to, well, when it's all stripped away as it is now, when the entertainment and the distraction and my ability to run away from any of that has been stripped away, I come back to a simpler life, which is kind of what we're all living now. And in this simplicity of the life I'm living, I see how vulnerable I really have felt for a long time in a world that is spiraling out of control. The law of entropy has seized our times, and the illusion of control is gone. And I actually think that's a good thing. As a meditator, I feel like I've signed up to face the illusions that I have created for myself and especially to see in my quiet moments how I have willingly been complicit with the world as it manufactures illusion. And you know, I've had the opportunity to look back and go, did it ever really matter that I had that great outfit, or the best bag, or the most money in the bank, or a great job title, or I've been to the latest movie or restaurant, or read the latest book, whatever? Did it really ever matter? And so I feel like that's what this time, if I'm willing to sit with the vulnerability and the fears, is going to reveal. And I guess I'm seeing, I take heart at the outpouring of goodness around the world. And I think many people do, from what I can see. And I feel it's because it resonates deeply with what I know. And what I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that beneath the scary, out of control bits in the world and in human behavior is a pure core that is so deep and profound that it will outlast any crisis. So I turn my attention to that core goodness in me and in everyone around me, and it grounds me. And it grounds me in something that's imperishable, spirit. And so knowing this overrides fear. And then I look up, this is my practice, I look up to my beloved power source, and I feel like I have a safety harness on me, keeping my awareness above the chaos below me, and filling me with strength to carry on creating. And I guess the last thought that came to me was, I am most powerful when I'm creating, when my focus is on creating goodness. And God fuels the goodness in the soul, and together we, all of us, will create something beautiful from these times.
Thank you, Judy. I love the animated way you started with the coil, the snake, the embodiment of that in your body. And then the illusion of control being gone is so powerful, because it's gone, now we have an opportunity for more clarity for what is really true, and an opportunity to really live in that simplicity, but also tap more into that deeper, pure core of goodness that is a well that is eternal and beautiful. Thank you. Well, I'll go last. I kind of began very similar to how you did, Judy. I started with the feeling, and I didn't really know where this was going. I'm just going to read. There's that feeling again in the pit of my stomach, that ache, that irregular heartbeat that is taking me down, down, down in spirits. That feeling again, and that voice again. It can feel so paralyzing. How do I work with this voice, this feeling? What can I do? How can I soften into it, this fear, this voice of fear, this feeling of fear? Best not to feed it. I can't flee from it. I don't want to fight it. Perhaps I could have a conversation with this voice of fear. Fear, you are my friend. Thank you for reminding me that you are here to take care of me. Thank you for reminding me that I need to keep myself safe and take care of myself, and that's what I'm doing. Thank you, my friend, my voice of fear, for your positive intention to keep me safe. Thank you for checking in. Fear, I want to let you know that I'm right now in this moment safe. I am grateful. I am full of love. I am okay. I'm taking care of myself. Fear, let's be friends. I thank you for checking in with me with your positive intention. And as you dial in to my brain and body from here on in, I will reassure you that I and my soul am very safe, am healthy, am full of love, am taking care of myself in all the best ways possible. I will reassure you, and in doing that, reassure me and my soul, and bring more peace. Om Shanti, peace, peace, peace. That's it. Thank you, everyone, for all of your contributions today and all this beautiful wisdom around this topic of fear and vulnerability. And we look forward to joining you on our next podcast.